when it comes to people in the West and when they talk about Japan and Japanese culture, it's like Japan has a buff. It's like they have some kind of RPG buff where Ubisoft must be kicking themselves in multiple ways. They must be looking at this stuff and they must be like, why didn't we just make this video? I think is just it's like I think this needs to be explored too and examined. Because the Japanese Prime Minister is saying this about a game that you hate, now his take is based. Assassin's Creed Shadows has become one of those games that is basically a war ground, it's a battleground for So I'll go through the timeline in terms of how I felt about this game. From like the beginning of when it was first announced and when people started talking about it. At first, I never really cared because I don't play Assassin's Creed. It's not my kind of game. It's Ubisoft. I don't really, yeah, I'm just not really interested, right? So I never really paid much attention. Obviously, I knew about the story and how it's deciding to make Yasuke one of the main protagonists and Yasuke as a character or a fictional or non-fictional character. I know that the history of Yasuke has always been in contention as to whether he was a samurai or a retainer or things like that. So I knew about it, but I didn't know much about the details of the game or the story. But then I started to hear people complaining, obviously, you know, you got the DEI stuff and how people were classing Assassin's Creed Shadow as just another one of those woke hyper DEI games. So I was hearing some of that. And for the most part, my position was mostly, I get it. I understand why a lot of fans who have been wanting an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan for the longest time, I understood and I could get behind the feeling of, oh man, we finally get an Assassin's Creed game set in Japan and the main character is not even a Japanese person or it doesn't primarily focus on the Japanese character, right? I understood that. Even though there's plenty of stories in media, whether it's video games, movies, or books, where a game or a story can be set in a country or a place where the main protagonist is not from there, right? That happens all the time. But in the case of a game where a lot of people were looking forward to this specific setting, I could understand it. But lately, I think Assassin's Creed Shadows has become one of those games that is basically a war ground. It's a battleground for political ideologies, and it's become a bit too much for me, in my opinion. And the thing that the Prime Minister said, I hate how so many, speaking of battlegrounds and politicized words, what he said is being taken, like whatever side you're on, you can spin what he said to support that side. But the thing that pisses me off about it is that it seems to be, not even seems to be, it's quite clear that like a lot of people are taking what he said as a way to say, see, even the Japanese president is saying that this game is horrible and that this game shouldn't be allowed to exist and that this game is offensive to Japanese culture, right? But if you just look at what was actually said, like in the entirety of what he spoke about, the fear that he's bringing up is that the fact that some of the actions you can do in the game doesn't really adhere to Japanese culture. With the vandalism tourism that we've been getting in Japan recently, they're worried that the game is going to serve as a vehicle or to help promote the things that people might do in real life. I understand the concern, but at the same time, there's so many games. Like it's literally the argument of a boomer, an old person saying those video games are bad. They're going to make people do bad things. This is an argument from as old as time, and it's never been an argument that's been taken seriously for the most part. So why is it now that when the Japanese Prime Minister says it, so many people decide to use it as like a good example of like, yeah, he's right. Yeah, go him. Like, yeah, shit on Ubisoft, ban the game. Like, it's like, no, if this was any other old person saying video games cause violence and are bad because it encourages people to be violent, you wouldn't take them seriously. But because somebody is saying it while talking about a game that you already don't like or a game that you wish didn't exist or a game that has got too much DEI or disrespects Japanese culture or a game that is against your political ideology, because they're saying it about that game, now you want to champion what's being said. On top of the fact that what he's saying, he's not even talking about the game specifically or only, he's talking about the concern that the game or the potential effect that the game could have on real life and how people behave in real life. We already all know that you can't use a game and be like, oh, well, this game is bad because it might make people do this thing. It's like, well, no, that's not really how it works, right? You know, aside from a few fringe cases, that Assassin's Creed has been doing crazy things like this in so many of their previous games. So why is it suddenly an issue now? Or why is it a uniquely particular issue now? There's a lot of ways to examine this. Like it does seem to be the case that Japan and Japanese culture, when it comes to people in the West and when they talk about Japan and Japanese culture, it's like Japan has a buff. It's like they have some kind of RPG buff where when it's in defense of Japan or when they do or say certain things, it has increased stats. It just has increased stats for whatever reason. But then if the same behavior is done by another studio or if it's in the West or just a non-Asian company, then the same treatment isn't had. It's like they get special treatment sometimes. And I just wish people would be a bit more honest about that or at least see that that's what's happening. Sometimes I really just wonder how much of this would not be happening. Like if Yasuke wasn't in the game, I truly wonder how much of this wouldn't be happening. If it was the same exact game, but it was a Japanese female protagonist and everything else plays out the same, I'm sure there would be some outrage, especially when it comes to the parts of the story that are not historically accurate. But then again, I'm pretty sure Assassin's Creed for the longest time has always been like there's a word for a type of story that is non-fictional. Oh, sorry. There's a word for the type of story that is fictional, but takes place within a real world setting that we are familiar with, but it takes creative liberties with that setting. I can't remember how you refer to that kind of story or narrative. I say I'm black pilled on it because so much of it is starting to reveal what's really going on in terms of how people really feel. The side narratives, like the political side of it, the East versus West. There's so many conversations that are being pulled into this game, and I don't think it's fair. Now, sure, Ubisoft didn't do themselves any favors. Like Ubisoft did have to apologize for some of the depictions or and stuff like that. Like they were definitely. I'm not going to say that they didn't do anything wrong because it does seem to be the case that they were not really considerate or they were a bit too egotistical or bold and confident that they knew what they were doing and that there wouldn't be any backlash. But I still don't think that the response to some of the things being done is fair. Even the clip that the Japanese media have been using to talk about how in Assassin's Creed Shadows you can vandalize stuff. It's not like a part of the game where there's like a narrative part where Yasuke is just destroying shrines and ancient locations. It's a clip of a player just doing it. Like the same way you can play GTA or you could play Dark Souls and you could just roll into a bunch of like, furniture or just destroy random parts of the environment for no reason. The game is not telling you to do it, but you can because there's destructible environments. So they got a clip of Yasuke just destroying a bunch of shrines because the player just decided to do it, but then they're acting like the whole game is about that, right? Or that there's a scene in the game where Nobunaga tells Yasuke to deface the shrines, and then the game does it like it's part of the narrative. Like you have to sit there and watch Yasuke. I'm gonna say Sasuke. You have to sit there and watch Yasuke just destroy the whole shrine. That's not how it happens. It's like you're getting this outraged about a clip where a player just freely controlled their character and just decided to literally record a 30-second clip of them just destroying a bunch of shrines. And then now you're using that to say this game is an affront to Japanese culture. I just think that that's not a very mature or a complete way to look at what's happening there, Another thing, there's one part of the Japanese Prime Minister's statement is that he even said he said something like he understands and appreciates the ability of free speech or art, right? He even says that in reference to the game. Like, I know it's art, I know it's like not real, it's a video game, but we are concerned that some of the things you can do in this game may make some people in real life resort to this kind of activity, because lately in Japan there has been a lot of stuff like that going on where foreigners have been visiting, whether it's the Johnny Somali, the streamers, and there's some other stories about some foreigners just like actually defacing shrines and like ancient locations or places that should be respected and stuff like that, right? So even by the own prime minister's words, he already gave the caveat of basically saying, I understand it's a game and I don't want people to not want, I don't want take people's right away to play the game, or I don't want to try to make it sound like games shouldn't have the ability to express themselves, right? Obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but and it's just frustrating that so many news outlets, whether it's Reddit, on Twitter, or other websites, depending on what political side they're on, they're either not including the whole speech and just talking about a small part to make it look like he's shitting on the game. And then there's other outlets that are including the whole speech because they realize it's bigger than that. That feels like a reasonable concern, to be honest. Yeah, it's a reasonable concern, but this kind of conversation has been going on since the dawn of time. Whether it's movies, whether it's music, whether it's video games, the argument that the Prime Minister made is no different from any older person saying, I'm not sure about those video games. They're really violent. There's a lot of violence in those video games. That's what's being said. This is not new. And what is normally said what is normally said in response to an older person who says that? Normally the players of the games, or even just people that are a bit more measured and balanced in their perspective of the universe, they will often say, yes, we can point to something that may be problematic in the video game, or maybe we think it's too violent, but that doesn't mean necessarily that the players of this game are now going to do that behavior in real life. Like we know this to be the case. This is not new. But what's annoying is that people are acting, or people are giving his words, the Japanese Prime Minister's words, some kind of special buff or exception, right? It's like because the Japanese Prime Minister is saying this about a game that you hate, now his take is based. Now him saying, those video games, got to watch out for those violent video games. Now it's based for him to say it because he's saying it about a game that you wish didn't exist, or a game that you fundamentally and ideologically disagree with. And that's what's really annoying to me, because that's such a clear hypocrisy. And to be fair, to be triple turbo fair, what I'm saying, that there's definitely a lot of people who are saying this too. Because if you go online and if you look at all the discussions being had about this, plenty of people are saying what I'm saying. And there are plenty of people who are saying it who also don't give a fuck about Assassin's Creed, but they see the hypocrisy. I think another reason why I'm black-pilled as well is because this is clearly a symptom or a result of people who have not watched or read the entire speech that was given. And this is happening so much in different areas of life as well, where people just don't read, people don't watch. They see they see the title, they get what they need from the title, and then they just go from there. Oh, his name is Johnny. Yeah, Johnny Somali. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, and to your point, the Prime Minister, when he spoke, he was clearly talking about that as well. He was talking about that stuff that's been going on in Japan with the streamers and Johnny Somali and others like that. Like, his speech was not only talking about, his speech was essentially saying, since we have some of the stuff going on, such as Johnny Somali and the streamers, the IRL streamers and all of that stuff, it's a bit scary, or we're a bit concerned that now this game is out, it might multiply, it might serve as a multiplier to the behavior that's already been happening here and there, which I agree, it's a reasonable concern. But a lot of people aren't looking at the entire thing and saying, yeah, that's a reasonable concern. What they're doing is they're taking the clip where he does mention the game, and they're like, see, even the Prime Minister is shitting on the game. Ubisoft is going to get sued. Ubisoft is going to go bankrupt now. Like, the Japanese government is going to ban the game. And it's like, no, that's not what he said. That's not what he was. That's not why he brought up the game. This is the video that a lot of people were reacting to. I believe this is a Japanese content creator, and I think he's doing a lot of translation and stuff. But I think there's subtitles in the video anyway.
Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba is
Wait, hold on. Why is there no audio?
not happy about Assassin's Creed Shadows. Let's watch this.
I like to talk about the so-called Asakuri issue. Here's what I want to
Did you
ask.
hear that? He said Asakuri issue, meaning we Japanese
Asakuri Mondai, Assassin's Creed Shadows issue. Okay, so the issue has like its own name, its own terminology, which definitely does lend the credibility that like this is an actual issue that enough Japanese people are talking about.
keep on talking about this all the time. So Asakuri issue, he didn't explain about Asakuri issue, right? Because
Everybody
knows.
knows. Tomorrow, March 20th, there's a game set to release from Ubisoft in France, produced by the company called Assassin's Creed Shadows. That's what this is about.
ついてなんですけど、海
Overseas
外
though,
で先行プレイの
early
動画が
gameplay videos
YouTube で
have already
アップ
popped
され
up
て
on
おりまし
YouTube.
て、
I
それ
watched
を
them,
拝
and
見い
here's
た
what I
します
saw.
と、
That video that went to really
This video, I think is just it's like
viral.
I think that I think this needs to be explored too and examined. I think this is such a silly thing.
And I was
I think there's a tangible difference. If
しますと、
that
if this
video
scene
that went
if this scene played out in a cutscene where it's like the character in the story does it, right? And it's like something you're forced to sit down and watch, right? That's one thing. I think that's something that is a bit more credible to complain about. But for it to be a scene or a clip where a player, I guess in order to prove a point, the player just decided to just do this, right? It's not like a mission, right? Or even if it was a mission, if it's like, hey, in this mission, to clear the mission, you need to do this, you know, then I think that's more of a credible complaint as well. But it's just a player just having fun in the sandbox and deciding to do this to prove a point or to create drama, I guess. I don't know. I feel a bit weird about getting so hot and bothered about an optional thing that a player did in the game rather than a part of the game that's like part of the built-in narrative or something like that, you know? Complaining about that could lead to gamers having less free will and expression in the future games. Yeah, possibly. And it's also just, I just think perhaps more importantly for me, it's just disingenuous. It's not really, I wish that was also addressed. I'm not saying that because it's a player doing it from their own free will, that it's not worth talking about all of a sudden. But I do think it's worth addressing that, hey, this scene we're looking at is a player who used their own freedom to do this. And it's not something that the narrative of the game is pushing forward. It's not a mission where in order to get to the next part of the story, you have to do this. And it's not a cutscene that plays out in front of your eyes that you can't not watch unless you skip it. But if you skip it, it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It still happens in the story. I just wish that people would treat this issue a little bit more honestly. That's just a player interacting with the world. Yeah, this behavior is neither encouraged nor mandatory. Exactly.
to really viral. And I was
imagine a world like 5 years from now, maybe another Assassin's Creed game comes out, or any game set in any country that has ancient relics or, cultural areas that should be respected, right? The game is now set there. And then you have the protagonist able to, because the game is fully 3D and has physics and the game involves combat to some degree. So now you can go to these areas and deface them, right? Even, like, now we're going to live in a world where, okay, now we have to make sure that we can't do that we can't allow the player to destroy anything, or you can destroy things, but you just can't go into this area, because I think that's a very, very slippery slope that I think we should probably try to avoid, To be fair, I never see GTA let player into a church or place of prayer, but I do agree. You put player in and sandbox player can do whatever you want, for sure. And I don't play Assassin's Creed, but I've heard that there are other older Assassin's Creed games where you can do stuff like this. Like there's one Assassin's Creed game where you kill the Pope apparently, and you can, there's all kinds of things you can do. To your point, that there could just be a thing where, okay, in order to be very, very sensitive, let's just not allow the player in any of these areas, right? They could have gone down that path if they wanted to be very, very safe. But on the flip side, it's like, well, if you're setting a game in this time period, you would expect to not allow the player to venture into these places might be a little bit unrealistic. But then there's another way around it. Maybe in these ancient shrine areas, like in Elden Ring, right? Or in some games where normally you go out into the field and you can fight, you can take out your sword and swing it anywhere. But in some areas you can't do that. Like the player character is forced to put their weapon away, and then if you press the attack button, nothing happens, because in this area you cannot attack. Just like in Elden Ring, in the round table hold, you can't fight in the round table hold because there's like a flag. It's like when they programmed it, in this area, player does not flag PvP or PvE, like you just can't fight, right? They could have did that. That would be I guess another way to go about it. But Does it matter if the game allows you to do it and if it's part of the story that you need to do it? Feels like a meaningless distinction. I think it's not meaningless. I think there's meaning to that because the reason why it's meaningful is because a lot of what is being talked about, because again, it goes back to the Asakuri issue. There's an issue in regards to Assassin's Creed that a lot of Japanese have been talking about, right? And part of the Asakuri issue is that the game is culturally insensitive and does harm or is disrespectful to
A sign of the times, perhaps?
is
This is
disrespectful
really
to
happening.
Japanese culture,
Jap-
right? So if that is the main complaint, there is a meaningful difference where if Ubisoft gave you a mission where in the mission you have to deface these shrines, like the faster you destroy them, the more points you get or something, right? That is more disrespectful because then it means that the developer has created an intentional part of the game where they're showing disrespect by making it a goal to do these things, right? But if there's no gameplay goal, there's no actual narrative goal behind it, and the player can just do it because of by nature of it being not open world, by nature of it being a fully 3D game where you can roam about and swing your weapon against anything, that's different. That's not like Ubisoft isn't sanctioning. Like if Ubisoft makes this into a mission, right? It's more, the Japanese will be more able to like sanction it as like this is co-signed behavior or co-signed, like this whole feeling of Ubisoft disrespecting our culture. This is our proof. Ubisoft is giving you a mission to do this shit, right? They have more ammunition to be able to make that claim. But when it's a player who's just free roaming and just doing it as a result of the functionality of the game, it's different. Would you say the same if it wasn't a mission, but you did get an achievement for smashing up the place? If you got an achievement for smashing up the place, I would say that's not good either. I would say that the Japanese would use that, or anyone who's bothered by this would also use that as a cosign of, see, Ubisoft is co-signing, Ubisoft is rewarding the player for defacing our sacred sites. So yeah, if you did all of this and you got the boop, 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 you got the notification, the achievement pop up, that's not a good look either. What I'm saying is that I could see people using that as a reason to pin that against Ubisoft too.
I think most of people doesn't know that's that shrine and altar, I guess. But a lot of Japanese people feel offended about that video.
板手氷図シュラインと実名で
And using real names
私の兵庫
in
県
my home of Hyogo
姫路市の
Prefecture,
入
Himeji
間の国
City,
奏者
Hiromano
板手屋
Kuni
鉄
Sosha.
板手氷図
Okay,
神社が
Japanese
登
names
場しま
showing
す
up.
ゲームの中で
In
で
the
す
game
ね
itself,
主人
the
公
main
の
character,
侍
a
は
samurai,
刀を
swings a
手に回
sword
して拝
inside
殿
the
内
prayer
で
hall,
太鼓や
smashing
宗教
drums,
祭
altars,
壇
and
を
sacred
粉砕しま
objects.
し
He
て
shatters them,
そして境内にい
then
る
slashes at
向こうの
villagers
神や
on the
神
shrine
職とお
grounds
もしき人
and
物
what
な
looks
どを
like
切り
priests
つけ
cutting them
指を
down,
射ったりするよ
even
う
shoot the
な
arrow.
乱暴狼
It's
藉
set
が
up
でき
so
る
you
よう
can
にな
commit
ってい
these
ま
violent
す。
acts.
Yeah, that's the things. They can just disable it, but they made it object that breakable.
私はこの話
Yeah, it's like Ubisoft must be kicking themselves in multiple ways. They must be looking at this stuff and they must be like, why didn't we just make it so you just can't even take out your sword in this area? Like this conversation, this video, this meeting, this question being asked to the Prime Minister probably doesn't happen at all. This reality does not manifest if they just made that decision. And I think it's something that they could have gone back and changed too. Maybe that wasn't part of the plan to make it a not fightable area. But given all of the build up and all of the backlash that this game was receiving way before it came out, that might have been a smart play to be like, you know what, let's have a bit of foresight and predict what could happen. Let's go back and change the programming in this area so that this stuff is not possible.
ですね、ちょっと地
When I
元
heard
の
about this, since it's a local shrine, I
神社
went
でもあります
straight
ので、直接宮司さんに
to
お
the
話
chief
を
priest
伺
to
いま
talk
した
it。over.
当該
The
ゲー
game
ム会社
company
から
never
は
reached out,
神社に対し
not
ま
once
して
to the
名
shrine
称の使
about
用
using
とか
its
など
name
の
or
連
getting
絡は
permission.
一切なかったと
Nothing at
いう
all.
ことであります。
That's what he said.
他にも
On
奈良
top
の
of
東
that,
大寺
places
な
like
どの寺
Nara,
社や
Todaji,
古墳など
and other shrines, I think he said, and
の
ancient burial mounds,
まあいわば具体的
specific
な映
sites,
像
their images and
肖像がです
likenesses
ね 無許可で
were used
使
without
用されており
permission.
ます。
That's happening too. I think I need to do a bit more research on the actual procedure behind how and when the company making a game needs to get permission. Because I'm not sure if it's just a matter of, oh, you're using a real name, you need permission. I'm not sure exactly how that works. And I imagine it will change with depending on the country too. I imagine there's different procedures to how that's supposed to go. And I also imagine that maybe holy sites have different rules, and maybe like places that are not holy sites, like maybe I don't know, like company names. Well, no, company names you definitely usually need permission. Yeah, I'm not. I'm guessing that there is some kind of like aspect here where there is a lot more knowledge to be gained around the actual procedure of how that's supposed to happen, because it wouldn't surprise me if there is some kind of loophole or scenario where you actually don't need permission and it's fine to put it in the game. Like I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just leaving that open in case that happens to be the case.
本日はですね、
Today we have
大口
Masaki
正樹経
Oguchi,
産副大
Vice
臣にお
Minister
越し
of
いただいてお
Economy,
ります
joining
が、
us.
国内外問わずゲー
Globally,
ムを楽
the
しむ
number
ユ
of
ーザー
people
というのは
enjoying
年
games
々増加して
keeps
おります
growing
が、
every year.
ゲーム等におけ
But when
る
it comes to
固有施
games
設
using
の
footage
映
of
像な
specific
どをですね、
places
無許可で
without
使
permission,
用することに
I'd
つ
love
い
to hear
て
your
ご
thoughts.
見解をお
What's your
伺い
take
した
on
いと
this?
思い
Give
ま
us
す。
your volcanic take,
経済
your
産
hot
業省
take.
大串
Vice Minister Oguchi, Ministry of
副大臣
Economy.
This is
That-
just
And I think now the
kind
president
of
talks.
insider note. I know some people that send me this video. So they didn't use word of Yasuke. Can't talk about it that detail, but something really scared concerns me. It's that there's an unspoken rule. You cannot cause other trouble to other ministries. I heard they can't use word of Yasuke in here. If you're Japanese, I think this is one of the biggest concern.
So you can't say. But I think I feel like that's something that there's probably a lot going on there. If they can't bring up the word Yasuke's name, there's probably a lot going on as to why that is the case. That is going to be way above my pay grade and requires a lot of research and understanding Japanese history and cultural norms. I don't like that he kind of makes it sound, maybe I'm reading too much into what he's saying, but I get the feeling that he's saying like the fact that they can't bring up the name Yasuke is a problem because it's as if people are scared to tell the truth or something. I know I'm doing a bit of reading into his statement there, but let me listen again.
Really scared word. Oh, some people.
大臣
This is just kind of insider note. I know some people that send me this video. So they didn't use word of Yasuke. Can't talk about it that detail, but something really scared concerns me.
Something really scared concerns me. So I think that line of sentencing right there, or that sentence right there, makes me feel like he thinks there's like a conspiracy going on as to why they can't say Yasuke's name.
It's that there's an unspoken rule. You cannot cause other trouble to other ministries. I heard
I don't know what he means by other ministries. I think that's something I'll have to
they
research.
can't use word of Yasuke in here. If you're Japanese, I think this is one of the biggest concern. And they decided to not to mention about Yasuke. That's what they told me. But my concern is that which ministry get trouble if they use word of Yasuke in here? As a Japanese, that's one of the biggest concern. What's going on, really?
お答えいたし
Interesting.
ます
I'll
一
take
般
that
的な
question.
ゲーム
In
政策に
general,
おきま
game
して
policy, in general game policy, when real
現存する
world
固有名
names
詞
of
と商業
properties,
商業
names
利
or
用する際
properties
に
are used commercially, you need permission from whoever
その知的
holds
財産を有する個人や
those
団体
rights,
等の
okay?
許可を得
Be
て
it individuals or organizations, that's my
いる必要があるも
understanding.
のと認識をしております。
That's how it
知的
works.
財産を
If
許可
intellectual property is used
で
without
利用
consent,
されているケー
it
スにおきま
depends
して
on
は
the
個別の
situation.
事情によるもの
Each
である
case
た
is
め当事者
unique.
間で協
Each case is unique. So it's something that involved parties should sort out, okay?
議されるものと
Fair
承知
enough,
しております。
understood.
その上で、
That
神社側等
said,
から
if
相談
shrines or others reach
ご
out
ざい
with
ましたら、
concerns,
関係省庁と
we'd work with the relevant agencies
連携しつつ適
to
切に
handle
対
it
応してまいりた
appropriately.
いというふう
That's
に思い
our
ます。
approach.
加田博之君
ありがとうございます。
Thanks for that.
今の答弁
Okay, this is the president now. Sorry, Prime Minister of Japan. like you
した
just
ように
said,
ですね、
wait, it is right. I think it is.
やっぱり無許可で使用
Using
すると
things
いうこと
without
は、
permission.
本当にいけないことだと思いますし、本当にこのことについて
Wait,
は、
no, sorry. This is not the prime minister. I think fuck. Is he? Maybe he'll say it. I thought he wears glasses, the prime minister.
田博之君、
ありがとうございます。今の答弁ありましたよう
Like
に
you
で
just
すね、
said,
やっぱり無許可で使
using
用する
things
という
without
ことは、
permission
本当にいけないこと
is
だと
really
思いますし、
unacceptable in my
本当
view.
にこのことについて
I'm
は、
determined to
私
keep a
も
close
しっかりと
watch
注
on
視して
this
いきたい
issue
と思ってお
moving
ります。
forward.
それでですね、
Now,
それに伴いま
On
し
a
て、昨
related
今、
note,
コロ
lately,
ナ禍の影響も
as
薄
the
れまし
effects of the pandemic fade,
て、観光客が急
tourism
回復しまして、
has
各地
bounced back, but in many
でオーバー
places,
ツーリズムによる
over tourism is called over tourism. I've never heard that term before. Over tourism? Over tourism is defined as the impact of tourism on a destination or parts thereof that excessively influences perceived quality of life of citizens and or quality of visitor experiences in a negative way. It occurs when there are too many visitors to a particular destination. The actual number of visitors is subjective to the capacity a given destination can manage without seeing detriment to the environment. Over tourism can negatively impact local residents, visitors, and the surrounding environment of a particular destination. Okay, understood.
中に神社の鳥によじ登った
People
り
climbing on shrine Tory
ですね、
gates,
神
shrine
社の
Tory
石中
gates,
落書きする
or
など、
scribbling
観光
graffiti
客
on
の
shrine
迷惑行
pillars.
為は、観
Tourist
光公害とも
misbehavior
言え
is
る事
turning
態であ
into
り
a
ます。
real
That's
tourism
also
headache.
something I've been talking about on my channel. And you have a lot of foreigners
Yeah.
who do that. I gotta
This
be
is
honest.
happening
Just
a lot.
because they think
Like a lot of them they've heard about how the Japanese are quote unquote timid or laid back or not confrontational, so they do a bunch of tomfoolery over there and expect to get away with it, and it seems like most of the time they actually do.
Japanese won't fight back. Japanese won't say anything. Or they're taking advantage of Japanese politeness or kindness or even shyness. And it's very natural that as a Japanese, if you see that game, we feel like, oh, they can do that because they think Japanese won't say no.
私は
Here's
当
my
該の
worry.
ゲ
In
ーム
this
機の中
game,
で、NPC、
NPCs,
ノンプレイヤ
non-player
ーキャラクター
characters, and these real places used without
というも
permission,
のに対してとかです
you
ね、
can attack
承
them
諾さ
or
れた
destroy them.
承諾なく
What
使用
if
された施設
that
の
kind
映像
of
の中
behavior
で
in the
攻
game
撃や
spills
破壊する行為が
into the
現
real
実
world? And this is the main issue that I had with a lot of the responses to this, because a lot of people didn't even get this far into the video or even realize that the main concern is that the game is being used to raise a concern, another concern, or a concern that involves other things going on, such as the over tourism situation and the way that foreigners are disrespecting disrespecting Japan. You know, like it's so clear, right? The fear is that the game, if it spills over into this, then this situation will get worse. Whereas people were saying, even the Japanese prime minister is saying the game is trash and that the game shouldn't exist, and that the game, it's like, well, that's not entirely the complete picture of what's being said. Could it inspire copycat nuisance acts? That's what's on my
つながる
mind.
んではないかと懸念しております。先ほどの
The
神社の
shrine's chief
宮司
priest
さん
and
や
everyone
関係
involved
者の皆様
share
も
that
それ
concern.
を心配され
They're
ておりま
worried
した。
about it too.
もちろんですけど、
Of
これ申し上げ
course,
たい
I'm
のは
not saying
表現
freedom
の
of
自由というも
this is another thing that people didn't talk about. Here is where he says the thing about the freedom of expression, which is to me his way of saying that he does understand and respect or understand the importance of allowing a piece of art to express itself. You know, like he's not trying to completely delete that or say that that shouldn't exist, but of course there are some other areas where we need to be mindful of what could happen when you do those things, right? Or when you allow the player to do certain things, which I think is reasonable. But so many people didn't even catch that
も
part.
ちろんですけど、これ申し上げたいのは
I'm
表
not saying
現の自
freedom of expression isn't important. It
由
absolutely
というものは
is.
もちろん尊重されなければいけません。
But at the same
だが一方
time,
でですね、
there's this culture
長い間
that's
地
been
域の方々に
nurtured by local communities for
培われ
ages.
た文化に対しまして敬意を
We should approach it with
持って接
respect.
する。その土地の文化を
Disrespecting that
軽んじ
culture,
る行
that's
為は
something I
私は
think
慎むと
we
いうこ
need
と
to
は
avoid. It matters.
大事なことだと考
I
えて
see
お
it
り
as
ま
a
す。
big deal.
例えばですけど、
Take, for example, something like
長年敬
a
意
place
敬意がですね、信
revered
仰され
and
てきた
cherished for
フランスの
centuries,
ノートルダ
say
ム大
Notre Dame in
聖堂と
France,
かですね、イスラム教のコーラ
or
ン
the
などに
Quran
です
in
ね、礼
Islam.
を視するような
Yeah, we all know that they ain't no defacement, mosque destruction, ain't none of that. Drawing Muhammad, absolutely not. Yeah. yeah, we all know that's not happening, and if it does, it's gonna be a long day for that person that engages in that, especially if you're like drawing Muhammad and shit.
こんなですね、
If footage showed
映
them
像を使われていた
being
ら、どんな
disrespected,
気持ちに
how
現地の
would
人たちはなるか。
people there
これはもう
feel?
言わずがもが
You
なと
don't
思い
even
ます
need
Right.
to ask.
本当にこれは
That's the
私
thing.
思うんですけど
It's how
も、
I see
総
it.
理就任後初
Now
の
after becoming, oh, this is the prime minister. Now after becoming prime minister, on my first trip
国
back home,
ですね、まず地元の八頭町の
I visited Yazoo
渡
Town's
り神社を参拝しました。
Watari Shrine. So Prime Minister
石
Ishiba,
破総理にお伺いしたいんですけども、
I'd
まあ
like to
ゲーム
ask. Oh, that's not the prime minister. Okay. With
SNS
games,
等により
social
まして
media, and all
多
that,
文化を軽んじ
when
る
people
行為やそれに
disregard
伴
other
う観光
cultures or
妨害に
cause
ついて
tourism-related
ご知見を
trouble,
お伺いしたい
what's
と思
your
いま
view
す。
on it?
石破内閣総理大
Prime
臣。
Minister
これ
Shiba.
法的
Oh,
にどう
that's
する
him.
かということにつ
On the legal side of
きまして
this,
は、経産省あるい
I'd,
は
li- I'd want to sit down with the economy
文科省
ministry,
あるいは外務省とよく
education
協議をし
ministry,
てまいりたいと
and
思ってお
foreign
りま
ministry
す
to
が、
figure it out.
神社に落書き
But graffiti on shrines, that's completely out of the line. So yeah, what he said here tells me that this the legal side of thing, goes back to what I said earlier, which is I don't know. It feels like with the legal side of things, there's probably all kinds of loopholes and weirdness in terms of whether it's okay or not, whether they like or what the exact channels of how they should have went about it when making this kind of game, right? His sentences here lead me to believe that it is kind of complicated, and that even he would need to check to see the exact pathway that would need to be taken, or that Ubisoft should have taken, because it's probably not a super black or white thing.
これ法的にどうするかということにつきましては、経産省あるい
I
は
want
文
to sit
科
down
省
with the
あるい
economy
は外務
ministry,
省と
education
よく協議
ministry,
をして
and
まい
foreign
りたいと
ministry
思
to
っておりま
figure
す
it
が
out.、
神社に
But
落書きす
graffiti
るな
on
んぞっていう
shrines,
のはも
that's
っての
completely
ほ
out
か
of
の
line.
話であっ
It's
て
that simple.
Oh, this just happened.
Graffiti found on prestigious shrines. Oh wow, yeah, that was pretty recent.
それはもうその国
To me, it's an
に
insult to the
対する侮
country,
辱に他ならない
plain and
私は思
simple.
っている
That's
とこ
where
ろ
I
でございま
stand.
す。で
Look,
自衛隊を
when we
イラ
sent the self-defense force to
クラ
Iraq,
クサマーワに出しま
back
す
in
と
the
きに
day,
もちろんイスラム教
it
を信
wasn't about forcing beliefs on
じる
anyone,
とかそういう話ではありませんが、イスラム教
but
のしきたり
Islamic
とか、
customs and
そういうも
traditions.
のは
We
現
made
地に派
sure
遣さ
our
れる自衛
troops
官た
going
ち
there
に
understood
き
them.
ちんと
We
習得
drilled
し
it
ていく
in,
ように
learned the
というこ
basics.
とを
I
お
insisted
願
on
い
it.
をいたしまし
Take
た。
food, for
例えば
example,
料
in
理を
Japan,
全
you're
部食べちゃ
expected
わ
to
ないと
finish
いけ
everything or it feels
ない。
rude.
日本では
That's
みんな
our
食べない
way.
と申し訳ないみたい
Yeah,
な。
yeah. There's a cultural thing where like if you leave like some food on the plate, some will consider it as a sign of disrespect, like the food wasn't good enough, and that's why you didn't finish it.
いけない。日本ではみん
That's
な食べ
our
ないと
way.
申し訳
But
ないみ
over
たいなことがあ
there,
りますが、じゃあ、かの国
if
で
you
は
clean your
全
plate,
部食べちゃうと
it signals it wasn't enough. That's an insult. Oh damn, I didn't know that. That's a literal polar opposite cultural thing going
足り
on.
なかったという精進だってなんと
It
失礼
might
だ
seem
ということ
small,
になると
but
かで
at
す
the
ね。
very
それ
least,
表層的なものかもしれ
respecting
ま
a
せんが、少
country's
なくとも
culture
その国の
and
文化と
religion
か宗教と
is
か
fundamental. This is completely agreeable. No reasonable person will disagree with this. However, I do think that it's a bit unfair or a bit short-sighted to compare a military force going to another country to conducting military operations and teaching them to be mindful of the culture of the place that you're going to, clearly because you're engaging in, people are going to be dying, people are going to see you a certain way, even many years after your armed forces leave the country, people are going to remember how the Japanese or how that military force conducted themselves in that country, right? So of course it's going to be immensely paramount that the force understands the cultural norms. But this is quite different to a video game, which is a form of art, right? We got the aspect of, we're talking about fiction / non-fiction, we're talking about art, we're talking about expression of art, we're talking about entertainment, right? We're talking about entertainment versus an armed force. Like, I understand that the ultimate point that he's making is that respecting and understanding people's culture is very important. But I do think that there is a difference, or there is a difference worth exploring or worth pointing out, that a situation where there's a time of war and a force, a foreign army in a different country gives way or brings paramount attention to to how we should do things, and the aspect of culture and understanding is even more paramount in that world, in the world of military conflict. It's more paramount over there than it is with art. It's not important with art, is not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that with art, there's more liberties that can be made because it's art, because we're talking about something that is not always going to be like even just the notion of art is going to offend sometimes. It's going to question things sometimes. It's going to make people uncomfortable. It's going to make people feel comfortable, right? Whereas military conflict is not that at all. It's completely different.
そういうものに対する尊敬の念を持つということは、
To me, that's
私
a
は当然の
no-brainer.
ことだと思
Without
って
that,
おりますし
diplomacy doesn't
そう
work.
でなければ外
I'm
交という
convinced
の
of
も
it.
できないと思っております。
Here you
As
go.
a nation,
He said that. Without that respect, diplomacy doesn't work. Ubisoft. Listen, this is our
yeah, but making a game is not a matter of diplomacy, though. I guess it's a matter of diplomacy if you want your game to do really well in other countries or the country that it's based in. But fundamentally, the act of making a video game, which is a piece of entertainment and art and fiction, or to some degree fiction with this game, is not. It's not a matter of diplomacy.
our prime minister. Not just one unknown grifter is talking. Japanese prime minister is speaking.
I agree that a general attitude of respect towards people and culture is important, but Assassin's Creed doesn't represent a country's or official diplomatic style. Yeah, one minute exactly. Like it's yeah, what you said. Definitely, I'll copy paste that and act like I just said it, because that's a good point. Without that, diplomacy
こ
doesn't
とだ
work.
と思っておりますし、そうでなければ外交というのもできないと思っております。我々
As a
は国として
nation, we
そうい
should
うことを
lead.
潜水
As a nation, we should lead. What do you say?
そうでなければ外交というのもできないと思っております。
As a nation, we should lead on this.
で
Okay, got it.
そういうことを潜
If stuff like this happens, over tourism or
水反していかね
otherwise,
ばなりませんし、仮にもそういう
we
行為
can't just let
オー
it
バーツーリ
slide.
ズムもそう
Over
ですが
tourism
そう
aside,
いう
if
こと
it's
があったら
happening,
泣
we've
き
got
寝
to
入りは
call
し
it
ない。
out.
日本国民としてこうい
Japanese
うことは
people
許さ
won't
ない
stand for
とい
it.
うことも発信を
We
してい
need
く
to
ことは
say
極めて
loud
重
and
要
clear,
だ
and
と
it's
考えていると
critical,
ころでございます
in
ね。
my
Yeah.
view.
ただ、ひろゆき君。
I feel relieved, but please do something.
まさに総理のおっ
Spot
しゃる通
on.
り
The
で
Prime Minister
有
nailed
形
it.
無形の文化
Tangible
と
or
か
intangible
風習という
culture,
ものに対して
traditions.
ですね、
Wait, hold on. I feel like I want to say something about what he said at the end there. Oh, yeah. He's talking about he's talking, right? Everything here being said is not even about the game. And that's fine. Like he's talking about the real life scenario, such as the graffiti and the over tourism leading to negative situations going on. He's not even talking about the game right now.
発信
Which ironically is most of what's being discussed here is not actually about Assassin's Creed. It's about the fear of what Assassin's Creed could lead to, or how it could be a buff or a multiplier to what's already going on. Like there's already a bunch of stuff going on that the Japanese people are concerned about, like rightfully concerned about. And so Assassin's Creed was mentioned as a is this gonna make this thing even worse? And essentially what's being said here is we feel, yes, but what's at heart, the fact that these things are going on anyway, due to the over-tourism and the lack of cultural appreciation or respect for the Japanese or Japan in general, is that's already a problem that exists that they don't want to allow to fester, which again is totally reasonable. But again, I'm only watching this and kind of expressing this annoyance is because so many people are using this video as some kind of trump card blow up. Like, yeah, see, Ubisoft are terrible. Even the president is, or the prime minister is taking a dump on him. Like the game is, it's like, no, this is not entirely what's
していく
happening.
こと
I feel relieved, but please do something.
まさに
I wonder if he's made other videos on this. This is from 1 day ago, so I doubt he has made anything else. I'm gonna keep an eye on this channel. I'm curious. I would like to know if he has shared what he would like to happen in regards to this game.
総理
Spot
総理
on.
のおっしゃ
The
る通り
Prime
で
Minister nailed it.
有形無形の
He said true. Tangible or
文化
intangible
とか
culture,
風習というものに対して
traditions,
です
those
ね、やっぱり
things,
これは
we've got
お互い
to
がお互い
respect
敬意
each
を持っ
other,
て
both
やらなけ
sides.
れば私
That's
もい
how
け
I
ないと
see
思っ
it,
てい
and I
ます。
stand by that.
先ほどの東
Now,
大ゲー
this game we're talking about, okay, back to the game.
ムソフトにおいては、
Japan's
日
culture,
本の
its
部分の
landmarks,
文化
they're in there, used without permission and you can wreck them. Okay, so the being able to destroy them is a big part of the frustration. Yeah, Ubisoft must be kicking themselves. Like, fuck, damn it. There was a junior programmer that came to me at lunchtime and said to me, "Hey, I think we should make it so that you can't actually take out your sword in certain shrine areas." And I told him, you know what? Chill out. It's not that serious. We'll be fine. The game's great. We're Ubisoft. And he's like, damn it, I should have listened to that junior programmer. When we were drinking at the water fountain, I should have took him more seriously. Fuck. He's kicking himself right now.
施設というものとか、無許可でしかも
So
そういう
what about
形で
other countries'
破壊できるよう
stuff?
になっ
You
て
can't touch
じゃ
it.
あ、
That's
他国
not
の部
true.
分は
Why
ど
is
う
it
なのか
only
というと、それは
Japan's?
できないようになって
That's the
なぜ
setup.
日本だけだって
Why just us? That bugs
これ
me.
もやっぱり私
It's a
問題だと思うん
problem.
ですね。
No
これについ
question.
ても
And this point,
全てが全てって
not
いうのだと
everything,
なぜ
mind
日本
you,
だけという
but
こ
why
とについて
Japan
も
alone?
私は疑問
I've
を
got
持
real
っている一
questions
人
about
で
Yes.
that. What does he mean? What do you?
そのことについて
If the argument being made is that Japan has a unique situation where tourists that go there deface and trash and ruin cultural points of significance, and that this is not really done in other countries. If by other countries is only really talking about the Islamic world, then I think everyone here would agree that that probably never happens or happens a lot less, right? But this happens everywhere.
私問題だと思うんですね。本当はどうなのかというと、それをやっている。じゃ
You
あ、
can't
他
touch
国の
it.
部分はどう
Why
な
is
の
it
かという
only
と、それはで
Japan's?
きないようにな
That's
って
the
いる。
setup.
なぜ日本だけ
Why
できる
just us? I think I would be fine if maybe it's a translation thing. I think it would be fine. I would be on his side if he just said, it feels like this happens more often than us. And if I'm going to be good faith, let me just assume that that's what he means. Because that has to be what he means. He must just mean it feels like this happens over here in Japan more often. What Johnny Somali did in Japan doesn't happen everywhere. 100%, yeah, it doesn't. But he's not talking about just the Johnny Somalis. He's talking about general like vandalism and maybe like disrespecting the cultural norms or putting food on something that you shouldn't put it on. You know, like just he's not just talking about the extreme Johnny Somali type situation. But I agree. Like in Korea, well, actually, this thing, if he had said this seems to happen in Asia more, I would agree with that because people are going crazy. The streamers are going crazy in Korea, in Japan, in Taiwan. Sometimes this happened. In I don't know, maybe Thailand as well. Those four I know for sure. This has been happening, but Japan and Korea. It's been happening a lot more. But I'm gonna be good faith and just assume that he means that what he's really saying is, why does it happen with our country more, or why does it feel like it's happening more so, or why does the level of disrespect feel like it's higher? But because the translation is saying only, it's not only Japan, but I'm going to be good faith and interpret it as he just means magnitude, not only. I don't have any specific examples, but this is not a Japan exclusive issue. Yeah, it's not, because it's a human thing. Like sometimes humans will go to other countries, and because that's not their home country, they won't follow the rules, or they won't care to learn the customs, or they'll disrespect it, or that they're like, oh, well, I'm flying back home in a week, so I don't really. Some people just behave like that. Some people are pieces of shit like that, you know. So it's definitely not a Japan only thing. It's just a human problem.
全てが全てっていう
Not
のは
everything,
なぜ
mind
日
you,
本だけ
but
という
why
ことにつ
Japan
いても
alone?
Yes.
私は疑問を持っている。
He's doubled down so many times on the just us, only Japan alone. Like that's what makes me think it's actually not a translation thing. He actually is saying that it only happens in Japan, which is just demonstrably not true. I'm not the only one. And on this, going forward,
なかなか
it's
表現の自
tricky.
由と絡めた
Sure, it ties into freedom of
話
expression.
であるかもしれませんが、
True.
誤
But freedom taken the wrong
っ
way,
た意味での表現の自由とい
that's
うの
not
は
okay
私
with
は
me.
許されない。
And yeah, and it shouldn't fly. And that's the gift and the curse of freedom of expression, right? And he's right. Like I'm glad that he said
なかな
going
か
forward is
表現の自由
tricky.
と絡め
It ties into the freedom of expression. This right here is a sentence that admits that it is quite a tricky thing to explore. And I'm glad that that's being said, because some people are acting like it's not really complicated at all when it actually is if you really think about it. So
こちら
on
ま
that
た
note,
経産省ともども
I'd ask the
外
economy
交
ministry
外務省について
and
も
the
ご
foreign
協力
ministry
をお願い
to
したい
step
と
up
思っ
and
ており
help
ます
out here.
ありがとうございます。Yeah, do you remember when
I
I
wonder what else was said. I wonder if those ministries presented themselves later and then spoke more. Ubisoft actually made a black male fantasy game about conquering the Japanese through BBC set in feudal Japan. You can't make this up. That's another thing that pisses me off about so much of the reactions as well. It's just so much of the racialized comments. It's just, I mean, I know it's the internet and people get bold and just want to say the most inflammatory thing, but there's plenty of things to be concerned about or complain about the game that doesn't need to rely on like just the black jokes, you know. I saw some crazy joke. I think I screenshotted it on my phone. Hold on, where's my phone? Somebody on one of Asmongold's videos said black man looting, very accurate description, and then a comment, a reply said it's in their genes, you know. And mind you, this comment got over 129 likes, and then the response of it's in their genes got 18 likes. So it was probably because it just didn't get seen as much as the top comment. I think forcing a change or restricting access to any form of art by a country's government is dangerous and overstepping it. I agree. I think that there's a slippery slope there for sure. I just think that I could see a world where Ubisoft decides to do that because they might be in their offices right now just like, we need to control the damage. This is horrible optically. Although I would like to know how the game is selling, because I think this could be what's it called? What was that Harry Potter game? There was that Harry Potter game that came out, right? Hogwarts Legacy, and how people were trying to boycott it because of J.K. Rowling's perspectives, and then because of that news and the narrative surrounding that whole drama, the game ended up selling a lot more, right? So I could see this happening. I could see this happening with this game as well. But I still think that perhaps Ubisoft will just be in their offices like, we need to control this fire. It's getting really out of hand. What can we do? Sure, that if that change was presented to them, like, hey guys, just make it so that you can't destroy these shrines. Not every shrine, but these specific shrines, no go. I think even though it is the case that it does limit artistic expression, I think Ubisoft deciding to do that in a hypothetical world where they decide to do that, it would probably be a clever decision. They did bring this upon themselves in many regards, but I do think that the reaction and the fact that a lot of people are not even looking at the pure facts of what is being discussed and, you know, what the Prime Minister said in this video is also doing harm as well. Not just harm to Ubisoft, but harm to discourse in general. Just the whole aspect of how people discuss things online and how much people are speaking with enough knowledge is sadly declining at a rapid rate, which I think is a very unhealthy thing and is building a future that is looking quite spooky, if I don't say so myself.